Okay, so you are going to get your clay and a paper bowl. We're going to use this paper bowl to build our flower in. It gives it like a nice mold so that our flower doesn't kind of collapse and go flat. Since the clay is wet, it will give the bowl shape. So first I'm ripping off a piece of my clay and I am flattening it. You want to make sure you get all the air bubbles out of your clay, because if air bubbles are in the kiln, it can make our clay explode. So what I'm doing is making a flat piece about the size of the bottom of my bowl, and this is going to be the base of my flower. If you ever need to cut a piece of clay smaller, you can use the tools at your table to help you do that. So here's the base of my flower, and now I'm going to start taking smaller pieces and making the petals that go around my flower. I'm making my petal this leaf shape. You can make your petals whatever shape you want to and whatever size that you want to. So you're gonna have like a little petal making factory here where you're just gonna make a bunch of petals to go around your flower. Maybe all of your petals will be the same shape. Maybe they will be different shapes. That's up to you. So now I'm going to start attaching my petals. When we attach clay to another piece of clay, we do a technique called scratch and slip. So first what I do is I use a fork or another pointed object to scratch my clay. Then I'm taking this mushy clay mixture called slip. Slip is watered down clay, and it's kind of what we use is cement to hold our clay pieces together. So first I scratched, then I added slip, and now I am pressing that petal into my base piece and connecting it using the slip and my finger so that they all become one piece together. This is very, very important to do because as our clay dries and the moisture from it is removed, it makes it a lot more fragile, and it can make these pieces fall apart. So as you are attaching your clay pieces to each other, make sure you're doing a really good job so that you are sure that those pieces do not fall apart as our clay dries out. At this part too, once you have all your petals attached, now you can start to add more details. So like the inside of my flower is looking a little plain, so I am going to go ahead and start adding details to the inside of my flower. When I look at the art of Georgia O'Keeffe, I noticed that she has added a lot of really great details and observed her flowers that she makes close up. So I'm going to borrow some inspiration from her to create a lot of details in my flower. So what I'm doing now is I am rolling out a piece. Like this is a long strip that I'm using my fingers to roll out and shape. And I'm going to put it around the base of my flower to draw attention to the middle and add some detail to the middle too. I'm going ahead and making sure I am using either my fingers or a tool to make sure that that piece is really sticking to my base. Don't forget that you can always use the slip at your table. Sometimes too, I notice that maybe I need a little bit more clay in certain areas, so I can rip off more pieces of clay to add on to other areas of my art to make pieces more sturdy and stable, because you want to make sure that your clay is not too thin. Clay that is too thin, as it dries, has a chance of cracking, so make sure it's not too thin. So I made another coil to add another circular center of my flower. When you are making your flowers, you get to add whatever details you want. Your flower does not have to look just like mine. It can be unique to you. In nature, plants and flowers all look different, and I would love to see our class all have different flowers as well. At your table spots, there are lots of tools for you to use. You can experiment with some of those different tools. Here I'm using a tool that helps remove clay. It kind of gives it like a sharp edge. I can peel clay away with this tool. But a lot of times when we're working with clay, the best tools that we have are just our hands. So our hands will work great for everything too. So I'm using just my extra clay to go through and make more details. I'm rolling a small ball with my hands to put in the center there, using my scratch and slip technique to attach it. And when you're working with clay too, sometimes you'll do something and decide, you know what, like maybe I don't like that. And you can always take pieces out that maybe you decide that you don't like, and add pieces in that you decide you do want. That's one of the awesome things about clay, is that like if you don't like something, you could just smush it up and change it and then reuse that clay. In some of the examples, I noticed that in addition to the petals around the flower, they kind of had these really like elegant, beautiful, smaller petals sticking up, almost like sticking up like little claws, or if you think of like a cave, maybe like a stalagmite or a stalactite. So I'm going to put some of those in here. This is a more advanced thing to do with your clay. If you have extra time and you want a challenge, you could try doing this too. These pieces that I'm adding in though will be pretty fragile, and there's a good chance that when it goes into the kiln that at least one of these pieces will break off. So you can try doing something more delicate and more fragile like this if you really want a challenge. So the final step to your clay is that you can add texture to your flower. Texture in clay is really, really fun. And a lot of times when we add texture to clay, it's like making indents into the clay. So here you can see I'm using this wooden tool that looks kind of like a pencil to make creases in my petals. So you can carve different textures and different shapes into your clay to create these textures. And again, like you have a lot of tools at your table and you also have your fingers, so you can experiment and get creative with the textures you make and how they make them and how you make them. I'm also using this little pointed tool just to make some holes or dots into my clay to add some extra texture too. Who knows, maybe you will use your tools to invent a new way to make texture.